Galadriel, one of the most popular of all the tier 3 commanders due to the large amount of focus damage she can deal. In this video I'll break down how to skill and equip her, plus what troop compositions to use to make her as effective as possible. I hope you enjoy the video. So, Galadriel's breakdown. As mentioned in my introduction, Galadriel is a tier 3 commander and she's available from Season 1. You can increase her respect and recruit her either by pulling her invitation in a Matham chest or by collecting the Lost Quenya Score respect items, which are exclusive to Galadriel. Galadriel herself is an elf and she has the strategist role, which provides her with a bonus 25 focus, 2 skill points, and increases her focus, poison and burn damage by 10% when she hits level 20. The game defines her as an all-around commander capable of leading all types of units, and lets us know that she also has healing skills. Her base might and speed are very, very low, in fact, at 86 and 73 respectively. They also increase slowly at 0.69 and 0.84 respectively per level. However, these are definitely not the focus of Galadriel. The stat to focus on is her focus, which is exceptionally high, with a base value of 256, increasing by 3.11 per level. This focus is the highest focus of any commander currently in the game. Her respect level 10 unique item is the File of Galadriel. At base level, this provides 16 focus and 2 HP for your army, and when maximised increases to 48 focus and 6 army HP. The buff for this item is the Lady of Light, which causes one allied unit to recover 20% HP whenever Galadriel deals focus damage. This rank 10 item is exceptional compared to a lot of the other items. The provision of 6 HP per unit for your army is huge and massively increases your unit's survivability. The focus provision will also increase the damage dealt by the large number of Galadriel's focus damaging skills, which will then also heal your units due to the Lady of Light buff. To unlock this item, once respect 10, you'll need to get your ring to level 130. You'll also need to use Galadriel to heal 10,000 HP, and finally, perhaps the most difficult in some cases, you'll also need to recruit Elrond. So if you haven't been lucky in Elrond's invitation in a Matham chest, you're therefore required to invest respect items into Elrond in order to recruit him before you can get Galadriel's rank 10 item, which is quite unfortunate if I'm being honest. Anyway, into her skill trees. Her first respect 0 skill tree is headlined by Mistress of Magic. This skill buffs her focus damage by 3% per skill point, up to a maximum of 45%. When maximised, it also makes Galadriel's normal attacks deal focus damage instead of physical damage. This allows her to take massive advantage of that huge focus mentioned earlier. And then speaking of focus, the first sub-skill of this skill tree is Surge, which inflicts 21.4% or 150% when maxed, focus damage modified by focus to 2 separate targets. This activates every 3 rounds. Similarly, the second sub-skill, Focus Wrath, activates every 3 rounds as well, inflicting 28.2% or 198% when maximised, focus damage, and also inflicts Madness for 1 round on a single enemy target. The main thing to note here is that the first skill, Surge, is modified by focus, so the more focus you can get on Galadriel, the more damage it will deal to those 2 targets. The second respect 0 skill tree is Lady of Lorien. This increases the recovery of all of your units by 2% per skill point. You also gain an additional 15 focus when 15 skill points are allocated. The top sub-skill for this is Parting Gift, which is a heal that kicks in at round 8, which provides between 54.2 and 380% healing, depending on how many skill points you invest. The bottom sub-skill gives all of Galadriel's units a chance to remove a debuff each round. This chance begins at 14.3% and increases to 100% with 7 skill points. Next up, Galadriel at round 3 is yet another commander that can use the White Council skill tree. The initial White Council skill provides all units with a reduction to the first 3 instances of damage received, with a 4th instance if maximised. This begins at 1.2% reduction and hits a maximum of 19%. The sub-skills for this match that of Gandalf the Grey, starting with High Alert, which gives all of your troops up to 50% less damage received from focus, burn and poison damage, and the second sub-skill is Champion of Light, which grants 4% additional damage to Orcs, Uruk-hai and Trolls per skill point. Her rank 5 skill tree is headlined by the supremely useful Nenya's Guardian, which grants 2% bonus focus up to a maximum of 30%. When maximised, you also get an additional 15 focus, which again is impacted by the boost of Nenya's Guardian itself, so is almost 20 more focus once included with that. The top sub-skill for this is Ring of Water, which activates on round 3 and then every 3 rounds after that, giving one unit 360 HP recovery with a 50% chance of a further 360% when 7 skill points are allocated. This is one of the best single unit healing skills available to any commander, potentially even better than the Grey, though not as exploitable. The final sub-skill for Respect 5 is Magical Barrier, which grants 3.2 defense to your army up to a maximum of 23 when 7 skill points are allocated. This is yet another skill modified by focus, so if you can get Galadriel up to a monstrous level of focus, you'll have a very dominant commander. So from these, how would I recommend building her? So we're going to try and get her into a focus cannon build, meaning we want to exploit as many commander damage skills which use focus as possible, just to make sure that she's dealing as much focus damage as possible. So first off with this, we're going to put 15 points into the first rank Respect 0 skill tree, Mistress of Magic. This is to make her normal attacks now deal focus damage, and will also take advantage of that huge focus stat. In addition to that, this will also increase Galadriel's total focus damage, including that done by skills or by equipment, by 45%. To pair with this, we're going to put 7 points into both the focus damage skills available in this tree, and the only damage skills that are actually available to Galadriel, that is Surge and Focus Wrath. With Surge, we hit 2 opposing units with 150% focus every 3 rounds, and in exactly the same rounds we hit a single enemy target with another 198% focus damage with Madness to boot as a result of Focus Wrath. Both of these again are boosted by the 45% from Mistress of Magic, making Galadriel capable of huge bursts of damage every 3 rounds. Though of course this does leave her slightly vulnerable for the first 2 rounds until this burst of damage comes into effect to give you the unit advantage. But we'll get more onto that later. Next up, we're going to further boost our focus to maximise this damage by putting 15 points into the Respect 5 skill, Nenya's Guardian. 15 bonus focus, then a total focus boost by 30% will give a huge damage boost to Surge and Focus Wrath, so again just maximises that burst damage every 3 rounds. The last 2 recommended skills I now recommend revolve around leveraging Galadriel's huge focus to actually increase the survivability of her units. With 400 focus, she'll already be reducing the damage of your units by 20%, and obviously more if you have more than 400 focus. But by putting 7 points into Magical Barrier, these units will also gain plus 23 defense, potentially even more the higher the Galadriel's focus is. So you can have a huge defense boost on all of your units, making them harder to kill. And last but not least, we are going to put 7 points into the previously mentioned healing skill, Ring of Water, which will give us a huge healing boost to one unit in the same rounds as our damage burst. As for what you allocate your remaining skill points to, it'll depend on what respect level your Galadriel has. If you're fortunate to have her at an enormous respect, thing around respect 17, you could maximise a skill such as Lady of Lorien for a huge boost to your healing by 30% and also an additional 15 focus. Now, as I imagine most watching this, their respect level is lower than this, I'd recommend putting any spare points into White Council. This will reduce the first 3 instances of damage taken by Galadriel's units by 1.2% per skill point. This will help keep those units alive in the early rounds before Galadriel's burst damage comes into play to give you the unit number advantage. Now, on to the recommended equipment. The decision making process for these is fairly obvious. Try to always choose the item that grants the most focus. The higher the focus, the more damage Galadriel deals and the more durable her army will be. Secondary considerations should really be given to reducing damage taken by your units, as the longer they survive, the more damage Galadriel can dish out. Equipment which increases troop damage is not really needed, as your damage is done by Galadriel herself, so always look for more defensive items and bonus focus. So following this mantra, our first flawless weapon will be a Carver with the Smite effect. This is for the 24 bonus focus that we get when fully strengthened, but also is another opportunity to leverage Galadriel's huge focus, as Smite gives you a 35% chance to deal bonus focus damage every time the commander performs a normal attack. For armour, there's 2 strong choices. First is the Scale Mail with Melee Vigour to reduce the damage taken by your units, and also the additional focus that the Scale Mail grants. Though in my opinion, the best armour for Galadriel is the Quilted Armour with Attunement. The Quilted Armour itself offers less focus than Scale Mail, but Attunement offers 3 bonus focus per refinement. So deciding between these two is based on how many refines you can give the Quilted Armour so you can maximise the focus. If you can only refine it 1 or 2 times, it's probably not worth it over a Scale Mail with Melee Vigour, as you'll only get 1 or 2 more focus than the Scale Mail, but the Scale Mail will also reduce damage taken by your units by 2 or 3%, so therefore that would be the better choice. But if you can get a maximised Quilted Armour with fully refined Attunement, this will definitely be the best choice, as you can get a huge plus 15 focus from Attunement, along with the plus, I think it's 12% from a fully strengthened Quilted Armour. As for headgear, I personally prefer the Arnor Casque with Men Vigour. The casque itself offers plenty of focus, and Men Vigour will help keep your army alive. As you see on future troop compositions, men units will feature predominantly in this, so this will reduce damage that they take by 1% per refinement. Though obviously, if you do not plan to use men units, then maybe switch this out to something else, such as like a Trapper's Hood with Hysteria, just for that extra madness. Finally, for accessory, the choice is fairly simple. I'd recommend going with the Worn Out Smoking Pipe with Sustain. This pipe gives the most bonus focus, and Sustain will also help heal your units to improve their survivability. So, legendary equipment, With this, we're going to be going along very much the same pattern as the flawless equipment. And with that, for the weapon, I'm going to recommend the Noldor Sword. This gives slightly less focus than the Carver. However, the Mind Split focus damage effect has a higher activation chance with 50% instead of 35%, and the damage it deals is greater also. So it just gives you, a bit more damage once boosted by Galadriel's focus than even the Carver can with the bonus focus. For legendary armour, the Elven Cloak with Unity is an easy choice. The Elven Cloak itself gives large amounts of bonus focus, and similarly so does the Unity Refine, with +5 focus per refinement to this item. In addition to this, the cloak also gives bonus HP, so it increases your unit's survivability. For headgear, the Casque of the Submerged Isle with Aegis is the best choice in my opinion. Whilst the casque does not give as much bonus focus as such as a swan helm or a wizard's hat, and these are two very good choices, but they don't offer Aegis, so aren't as good in my opinion. Of course, Aegis does require several steps of refinement, so for those who don't know what Aegis does, it gives you immunity to madness and stun at 16.7% per refinement. So if you can refine this a few times and get it above 60%, this will definitely be what you'll want to use, so that your Aegis can trigger as much as possible and get that stun and madness immunity. If you can't refine this item many times, then maybe look towards something like the Swan Helm, as the bonus defense to men will be a lot more of an advantage. However, for now, if you're imagining that you can get the Casque of Submerged Isle with multiple refines, this does cover some of Galadriel's biggest weaknesses. The one thing we don't want to happen is for Galadriel to be stunned on the rounds that she would deal that massive burst of damage and therefore miss out, or even worse, get madness on these rounds so that she inflicts that huge damage on her own army. I know that Grima Wormtongue, the tier 1 commander for Evilside, is one of Galadriel's biggest counters, as he makes her basically just turn her damage on her own army. So that's why you want a Casque of Submerged Isle with Aegis, just to avoid this happening. Lastly, for an accessory, we'll go for the Fine Smoking Pipe with Heroism. The Fine Smoking Pipe offers huge focus to boost Galadriel's damage, even more than the Worn Out Smoking Pipe, and it also offers HP to your units to boost their survivability. But the best part of this is the Heroism refinement, which will massively increase Galadriel's damage at the minor cost of troop damage. So without being refined at all, Heroism gives Galadriel 3% bonus damage at the cost of only 1% troop damage. And when fully refined, this goes up to 15% bonus damage, which of course is huge when your commander is putting out as much damage as Galadriel is. So now let's move on to troop compositions. As previously mentioned, we aim to primarily keep troops alive so that she can deal damage. Therefore, we're not looking to put troops in which are, low HP or low defense but deal a lot of damage, as we want Galadriel herself to deal the damage. So the first two troop compositions I would recommend involve single stacks of men units, which you should use if you've chosen gear that improves the survivability of men units, such as the Swan Helm or anything with the Men Vigor refinement. So cataphracts are my first recommendation in a complete single stack. They're very expensive, but they're extremely durable, and the additional speed can help Galadriel move from tile to tile quicker. The cheaper option, though also very durable, is a single stack of Guards of the Tower. These can also help a little bit if you're facing off against cavalry commanders. So if you're facing off against a lot of Rohirrim, for example, and Theodens, then maybe these single stacks of Guards of the Tower would be a better choice. If you're not using men unit boosting gear, or you need fire resistance, say when coming up against evil, then you can actually use a single stack of the Dwarven unit Guardians instead. You could also use Iron Warriors if you have these as you're playing as Erebor. All of these compositions are single stack, so to make the most effective use of Galadriel's healing skill, Ring of Water, whose healing only applies to one unit every 3 rounds. But if you have a single stack, then all of this healing is going on your only stack of troops. So therefore we'll have huge amounts of healing, also boosted by her focus, every 3 rounds. The last troop composition I can recommend is if you're playing in later seasons, I think from Tactics Evolved onwards, then you can use the neutral camp to recruit Spirits of the Wood. And I'd recommend therefore going 50-50 between one of the tank based units, such as a Cataphract, and 50% the Spirit of the Wood. The reason for this is that they deal focus damage and therefore can give a large amount of troop damage at the same time as Galadriel's dealing focus damage herself. Whilst your units will obviously not be as survivable, you will lose more units, particularly if the healing is not hitting your tank unit every time. But the damage potential over 10 rounds is enormous, and you can absolutely destroy other commanders if they don't have any focus resistant armour. And that's the point where I should mention as well, before moving on to battle reports, I recommend when in war with Galadriel, always send a scout army, so that's a different commander with one troop command, just to go and scout out an army that you're hitting, under the knowledge that they'll lose, but just to see your opponent's commander. The reason for this is you want to keep an eye out, and if the opponent is using focus resistance, such as the refinement on quilted armour, or also something like a resistance body piece. And then I would choose not to hit that commander, as of course if he has any kind of focus resistance, your damage will be massively depleted. So, battle reports time. I'm not going to spend too much time running through the exact intricacies of these battle reports, as you know, with the troop composition, etc. I'm not going to have to break down how much damage each unit is doing, as obviously, as I've said before, the units themselves will be doing almost no damage at all. All the damage itself will be coming from Galadriel. You'll see here, particularly in this first one, this is Galadriel facing off against a very meta build for Gil Galad, one of the most popular good side commanders. And then again, also facing off against a very meta build for Gandalf the Grey, also using T4 units as well. Both units obviously very heavily used with the good side. And in both cases, Galadriel comes off with a more than positive trade, loses next to nothing in units, and still inflicts pretty huge damage. So these are pretty good demonstrations of what she can do. She's definitely capable of better as well, if you're not facing off against, say, equal level, for example. But that's not too bad for now. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video and found it informative, please drop a like and please consider subscribing. I do upload videos at least twice a week, and I hope to bring many more of these commander guides if people are finding them useful. Anyway, I've been HJW Gaming, and I really hope to see you on the next one.